fascism ever comes to America, it'll come in the name of liberalism. And what is fascism? Fascism is private ownership, private enterprise, but total government control and regulation. Well, isn't this the liberal philosophy?
Yes. Ronald Reagan, a man very much ahead of his time. He was Nostradamus-like there. The man that could see the future. And the future has apparently arrived. Of course, they've been here for a while, haven't they? The lefties. Fascism, a merger between state and corporate power, as Benito Mussolini once described it. His pals over there in the Socialist Workers' Party of Adolf Hitler, well, they had similar ideas. You saw the video that's reemerged of Kamala Harris. What was it, 2019, talking about how President Trump should be banned from Twitter because, we need more authoritarianism. Is that the word that she used, Michael? Authoritarianism? Something very close to that. Remarkable what's happened to the Democrat Party. The party of liberalism isn't the party of liberals or liberalism at all, is it? No, we've been pointing this out in myriad ways for so long. And there's much more of that today, heaping helping. Big heaping helping. And Kamala can say, and I helped. She can say, and she can put on an accent and pretend that she's from someplace and is something that she's not, as Democrats are so fond of doing, so want to do. Extraordinary stuff. Now, speaking of the corrupt media, were we talking about the corrupt media? No, but now we are. Here's a headline from Newsweek magazine. Putin, you know him, Vlad the Impaler Putin, he's a communist. The New York Times, I think, calls him a conservative. They call him a conservative. Putin claims support for Kamala Harris. Jokes about her infectious laugh. It's infectious, like monkeypox. Did we ever get that super spreader at the Democratic Convention of monkeypox? Are they just covering that up? Because I think if they learned about the monkeypox super spreader in Chicago at the Democratic Convention, it probably would not be widely reported on. Is that your impression? That's my impression. Vlad the Impaler. Vlad, we played the audio for you last year when Vlad the Impaler, he said twice that he supported Joe Biden. And now he says he supports Kamala Harris. Of course he does. He gets to, run roughshod over the world as long as Joe Biden and Kamala Harris are president of the United States. Are you kidding me? But while President Trump was in the White House, did he invade any place? Did he kidnap Americans? And, he's a commie. He's an old KGB guy. So he does bad things. He killed some of his enemies and threw some in jail, too. But he didn't do the really bad stuff. Well, he invaded Crimea during the Obama-Biden administration. Then he invaded the rest of Ukraine during the Biden-Harris administration. And all of that's fine. And the war started in the Middle East. And Joe Biden, Democrat Party leadership, they know, the bad guys of the world know that when there's weak leadership in Washington, D.C., weak leadership in the United States, that they can do what they want. Have their way with the world, as it were. And they're afraid of President Trump. But the news media and the Democrat Party, they sent their proxies out. Who did? Well, the Democrat Party and the news media. Which? What's the difference? Honestly, they sent their proxies out, and they just said with a straight face, like they can read Vlad Putin's mind. They know what's going on inside of his head. And they say, no, he supports Trump. Oh, okay. And then, coincidentally, I was off yesterday for a radio conference here in Washington, D.C., but I may get to that later. The Justice Department, Merrick Garland, held a press conference, went on and on about how the Russians, here's Vlad the Impaler again, the Russians have paid millions of dollars to who? To conservative voices in social media and on the internet, same thing, that are promoting the Russian worldview. And then a kind of a throwaway line. Oh, yeah, and Iran's doing the same thing. The people that sent a guy over here to get President Trump assassinated, Iran. He was a Pakistani who had been spending his time in Iran, and Iran sent the Pakistani over to hire hitmen to kill President Trump. And the Iranians, very much involved in our 2024 election. But I think that got, one sentence, maybe two sentences from Merrick Garland day before yesterday. And I'm marveling at this, these conservative media types were duped into doing the work of Vlad the Impaler Putin and Russia, propaganda for Russia to tamper in our election. And, like Iran wanted to kill Trump. I think that's tampering in the election. Our intelligence community in 2020 tampered in our election more than Russia has, by a long shot, by the way. But remarkable stuff. So they say that there are conservative people, a couple of whose names you might know, and they say that they're being paid and duped. They use the word duped in multiple write-ups about it, to carry Vlad the Impaler Putin's water for him. See, the Democrats don't have to be paid to carry the commie water for him. That's just what they do. It's what they've become. But I find this all to be remarkable. And did you see what one of the remarkable things is the news reports? I'm making quotation marks with my fingers. And also the Attorney General, the Chief Law Enforcement Officer of the United States of America, had this big press conference, very showboaty, lots of media, and then murmured something about Iran, which is a bigger player in all of this than they want to admit. But they say that these right-wing pundits and media personalities and social media figures, that they were peddling Russian propaganda. You know what they were? And again, it's not in the write-ups, but you know what they're accusing them of doing that serves the interests of the Russians? Talking about high inflation, high crime, open borders, and all the associated problems with the open borders. If you talk about Venezuelan gangs marauding through apartment complexes in Aurora, Colorado, or Venezuelan gangs dragging women down the sidewalk from their stolen scooters in New York City while they're stealing their purses, then you're serving Vladimir Putin's interests. If you talk about high interest rates and how it's difficult for young people to buy homes with high interest rates, you are serving Vladimir Putin's propagandistic interests. If you talk about crime, the crime wave that the Justice Department and the Bureau of Justice Statistics denies is taking place, but everybody knows it is because, you watch the local news, you look at the local paper, you walk down the street, you talk to your neighbors and your family. You know about the spike in crime in the United States of America. But if you're a social media figure and you talk about crime, then you are doing the work of Vlad the Impaler. If you talk about high interest rates and difficult economic times, then you are a shill for the Kremlin. The reality is, if you're Merrick Garland and you hold this press conference, you're a shill for the Kremlin. And by playing down the Iranian issues related to our 2024 election and the plot to assassinate President Trump, then you're serving the interests of the Ayatollahs in Iran. And our government has never been as corrupt as it is today, at least not in my lifetime. I've been paying attention for quite some time. And when Putin says that he supports Kamala because she's predictable or manipulable or weak and feckless and she's all of those things, then the news media and the Democrats come out and they laugh. Ha! He doesn't support Kamala. He supports Trump. And then the media moves on. That's it. That's the interview. Okay, thank you for straightening that out for us. Since you, as a Democrat, obviously live inside of Vlad the Impaler's head, and you know what he's thinking. Isn't that amazing? Harris Wall's campaign spokesperson, they never have genders. It's never a spokesman or a spokeswoman. It's a spokesperson because they don't check their genitalia or anything. Harris Wall's campaign Spox dismisses Putin, saying he supports VP in election. Quote, they prefer Donald Trump. That's it. And the media says, oh, see, the Democrat just said they prefer Donald Trump. Really? Okay. Is there any evidence to suggest that that's true? How did they behave during Obama, Biden? How did they behave during Biden? And how did they, the Russians, behave during Trump? There is a stark difference there. Also, did you see The former New York City mayor, Bill de Blasio, who is just a giant oversized Sacagawea. And Bill de Blasio, he went out and he had a little photo op event. Who would bother covering his photo op event? He's a former tragically failed mayor of New York City who wrecked the place, laid waste to the place, but not as much as Joe Biden and Kamala Harris and the current nitwit running the place. Bill de Blasio sprinkles coconut on a slice of pizza to show his support for Kamala Harris. She a coconut? Because that's a racial slur. That means you're brown on the outside and white on the inside. But he's referring to Kamala, talking about who is her mother, her grandmother, who used to talk about, allegedly, what are you, a coconut just fell out of the tree? And then she cackles like an idiot. And Bill de Blasio sprinkles coconut out of a plastic bag from Megacorp, sprinkles coconut on a slice of pizza. And then when he folded it, he didn't eat it like a normal person. You have a slice of pizza and you put it in your hand and then you bend the crust and you fold it and you eat it with the pointy end first, right? You eat the pointy end first. But he's from another planet. Some of these people might be space lizards from another galaxy, and he might be one of them. And he folded the slice of pizza and then ate it crust first, which makes it really hard to hold the rest of the pizza while you're eating it if you've already eaten the crust, which is kind of the handle of the slice of pizza. Last time you went out to eat pizza, you ate it with a fork and knife, and New York City almost had an insurrection. Isn't that amazing? No, an insurrection. That's different. And Robert F. Kennedy Jr., Elon Musk and RFK claim Kamala Harris wants to shut down X. X, that's, for Democrats listening along, that used to be called Twitter. That's formerly known as Twitter. They have to be told that every time for years on end because of the tiny little brain problem. But we got Robert F. Kennedy and Elon Musk. We played audio recently where Elon Musk self-described as a lifelong Democrat, right? Isn't that true? Lifelong Democrat. Speaking of which, he may not be anymore, but last time he was asked, that's what he said. And the woman who is a Latinx, she's a Latinx in California. She was also the Democrat leader in the state Senate in California, which is our most populous state, and lifelong Democrat. Worked her way up in the Democrat ranks, became a state senator, Democrat in California, became the Democrat leader in the Democrat-controlled Senate in state Senate in California. And she has left the party. She has left the Democrat Party. And she explains why. And I have that for you today as well, because everybody that has two brain cells to rub together is leaving the Democrat Party. Let's point to Joe Biden. He's not leaving the Democrat Party. Doesn't have two brain cells. Kamala Harris, not leaving the Democrat Party, doesn't have two brain cells. If you're listening and you're not leaving the Democrat Party, I don't know you personally, but I'm going to go out on a limb here and suggest that you probably don't have two brain cells to rub together. But this woman in California, she does apparently have at least two brain cells to rub together, and she's leaving the Democrat Party. Why is she leaving the Democrat Party? Well, interestingly enough, she said what RFK Jr. said about the Democrat Party, kind of. She said that, it's not the party. Well, I'll play the audio for you, because RFK said that his father, Robert F. Kennedy, the senior, who was shot in the head and killed by Sirhan, and his uncle, John F. Kennedy, shot in the head by communists, or maybe the CIA. We still need those documents. Said that his uncle and his father would not recognize the Democratic Party because, the Democratic Party isn't. Also, a remarkable development out of Georgia where there was a school shooting, 4 kids killed and many more shot by a lunatic who comes from a wrecked home. And they've charged the father with very serious crimes because he didn't keep the gun out of the hands of his lunatic son, who grew up as an abused child in his own household and so on. Amazing stuff. And there's talk about transgender massacres today, too. There have been way too many, given the percentage, the portion of the population. And NPR is still digging into that Donald Trump incident at Arlington National Cemetery. You'd think it was a big story. If only they'd cover the real news. Remarkable stuff. And we are at 888-630-9625. All right. Yeah. I got a bit of a late start this morning. I showed up just at the very last minute. Had to run from the elevator to the studio, and got it wasn't my ordinary morning, my normal morning today. So Michael and I are still pulling a couple of things together, but there is, as always, a great deal going on. And I tell you what, I'm talking to Sebastian Gorka, the great Sebastian Gorka, my great friend Sebastian, and talking about the Justice Department and their targeting of conservative media voices because they're stooges of Putin and selling Putin propaganda. And there is a very well-known podcaster, Tim Pool. And Tim Pool, he operates out of Maryland, doesn't he? And I've heard about his operation, which is supposed to be quite remarkable. But apparently was saying that it's Ukraine that is the greatest threat to America. Ukraine, and I would probably disagree with that Ukraine is the greatest threat to America. A lot of money goes from Ukraine to the coffers of the Democrat Party and the Biden family and to some Republicans, too, for that matter. But greatest threat to America, probably not. Probably not. I wouldn't say Ukraine was the greatest threat. I'd say the Democratic Party is the greatest threat to America. But that's me. One of the things, hanging out in the house yesterday with my best girl, and she was laughing and on the couch and looking and say, hey, what's that? Something making the rounds on the internet again. The Ahmad Rashad, Felicia Rashad, Mrs. Huxtable wedding. What was that, 1984? Is that 1985? And there had two groomsmen. I'll tell you who they were. So my best girl, sitting on the couch, laptop, laughed out loud. Said, "What's the funny?" Just something making the rounds. I think again on Al Gore's amazing internet. Peace be upon him. And I walked over and looked, of course, and as a wedding photo from the 1985 wedding of big superstar athlete Ahmad Rashad and his wife, who was a TV star, his bride, Felicia Rashad, and she was Mrs. Huxtable on that Bill Cosby show, and it was a big event, and everybody was all over it and stuff, and famous people everywhere, and Ahmad Rashad, he had two groomsmen, and only two groomsmen, at the wedding. And one of them was Bill Cosby, who it turned out was drugging and raping women for years and went to the penitentiary, which was an unbelievable development. And his other groomsmen, he had one other groomsman. Who is it? Who is the other groomsman? Raise your hand. That's right, O.J. Simpson. O.J. Simpson. So here's the wedding pictures. Everybody looks real nice. They're in tuxedos and stuff. And here's the world-famous super athlete and superstar Ahmad Rashad and his TV star wife, Felicia Rashad. And then in the picture, here are the two groomsmen, one of whom is O.J. Simpson and the other is Bill Cosby. Giving weddings a bad name, or TV a bad name, or what are they giving a bad name to? They're giving something a bad name. That's a pretty amazing thing. Yeah, it's a funny one. I guess you'd think he still has these wedding pictures up at home. They did get divorced in 2001, married in 1985, divorced in 2001. Very sad story. I wish they were still married and happily so, and still hanging out with their friends, Bill Cosby and O.J. Simpson, but didn't turn out very well. That's a pretty funny wedding picture, though, in its own way, depending on your definition of funny. I laughed. Everybody looks very nice. Nice tuxedos. There's the vicar. He's performing the thing. All right, let's get back to the real world now. A great story from the fine people at the Washington Examiner. And Gabe Kaminsky is the reporter, a real reporter, at the Washington Examiner. And that headline is Tim Walz. You know Tim Walz. He's the running mate of Kamala Harris, who thinks that free speech should be regulated by the government because she's something of a fascist, wouldn't you say? That's pretty much the thing about her. And the mainstream left in the United States, they were not liberals, they were leftists. But never mind that. Governor, the headline is Tim Walz promoted research facility that partners with China's Wuhan lab. Now, why is it that Democrats all across the United States in political posts have all these ties to communist China? Joe Biden flew over there in Air Force Two. He brought his crackhead, stripper, knocker-upper, Russian hooker, Dayton's son, who pleaded guilty yesterday to all the charges in his tax case so that he can be pardoned or, have his sentence dismissed by his father, by his dad, because he's got a lot of white privilege. That boy is just gushing white privilege. He chops up white privilege with a razor blade and snorts it. That's white privilege to him because he really prefers smoking the rock, doesn't he? But Tim Walz promoted research facility that partners with China's Wuhan lab. I wonder if Anthony Fauci was involved. What do you think? Governor Tim Walz, the Minnesota Democrat and Kamala Harris's running mate, the Democrat Party's vice presidential candidate, has long promoted a Minnesota-based medical research center with a history of working with the Wuhan Institute of Virology in China, which is what came from there again. Oh, yeah, the Wuhan Red Death came from there, the Wuhan Red Death. Speaking of which, at the Chris Plant store on Al Gore's Amazing Internet, we have our T-shirts with the bat on the chest, and I survived the Wuhan Red Death. I survived the Wuhan Red Death. Coffee mugs, too, just in case you drink coffee. I don't drink coffee, so I still have a lot of coffee mugs, though. I do. I have lots of coffee mugs. The big ones are good for soup. But never mind that. So Tim Walz, long history of promoting this research facility that is in bed with the Wuhan Institute of Virology, according to records reviewed by the Washington Examiner. The center in Walz's home state of Minnesota, the Hormel Institute. I think they do ham and lots of other stuff like that. Often collaborates on research with the Wuhan Institute of Virology. The institute in Wuhan, China, at the center of the COVID-19 lab leak theory. Is it really still called a theory? Don't we just know that's where it came from? I thought that was resolved, but call it a theory. The Democrats called that a conspiracy theory forever, which is another reason to believe that it's true, because if the Democrats tell you something, they're probably lying. For over a decade, Tim Walz has held meetings with the Hormel Institute and toured the research center, which has thanked Governor Walz for securing it millions of dollars in funding, records show. News of ties between Walz Allied Research Center and the Wuhan Institute of Virology comes as the Democrat vice presidential nominee faces a congressional investigation over his extensive connections to China, the communist China, because how many visits there, Michael? He spent a year there learning to become a communist when he was much younger, and now 30 visits, they say, about. It's really hard to say, might be 90, but right now they're saying they're copping to 30 visits to China. I've been to Hong Kong, but I haven't, hey, gosh, I can't wait to go back to communist China again and again, because they sure know how to do things, right? So for over a decade, he's been holding these meetings on news of the ties and congressional investigation and all that good stuff. This year, the U.S. government halted federal funding to a nonprofit group that worked with the lab in Wuhan, where the FBI has said COVID-19 likely emerged. No, it came from the sandwich shop down the street. That's where it came from, this manipulated virus, right? Walz has reportedly traveled 30 times to China, including for his honeymoon. And he chose his wedding date deliberately and specifically to be on the same date as the massacre in Tiananmen Square, according to his loving bride, according to his wife. Hey, let's get married on the anniversary. I think it was the 5th anniversary of the massacre at Tiananmen Square. And that's when he started going to China, and he liked it so much he just can't stop going back. And he likes to cozy up with anybody that's cozying up with the Chinese communists. So his honeymoon was in communist China. You know, Bernie Sanders, his honeymoon was in the USSR. You don't know how lucky you are. Boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. So we got more Tim Walz, more communist China. As a member of Congress, Tim Walz helped secure over $2 million for the Hormel Institute's technology acquisitions. Was a strong advocate for the Hormel Institute. It is an institute in Minnesota, after all, by supporting its major expansions. And, of course, they love the Wuhan Institute of Virology. Just one more sign, another indicator. One more thing. Did you see that video? I don't know if it's really him or not, of a guy that looks an awful lot like Tim Walz, kind of dressed up like a transgender person, doing a dance crazy thing. Have you seen that? Yeah, take a look at that, because you might want to share it with your family and friends. It's good stuff. Yes, sir. Yes, sir, Bob. All right, now, there's a lot of Democrat Party communist stuff today, isn't there? Yes, there is. Let me start. I want to finish up this segment with Ronald Reagan, with the Ronald Reagan quote. But let's go to what Robert F. Kennedy Jr. said about the Democrat Party today and the condition that the Democrat Party is in today, and what his father, Robert F. Kennedy, the senator assassinated while running for president in Los Angeles, California in 1968, and his uncle, John F. Kennedy, President of the United States, assassinated Dallas, Texas, 1963, what they would think of the Democrat Party today.
I don't think my father would recognize this party, and I don't think my uncle would recognize this party.
I don't think my father would recognize this party. I don't think my uncle would recognize this party. Now, Elon Musk, who is a target of the Democrat Party because he has become an outspoken supporter of free speech, and the Democrat Party, being the left, must kill free speech in America and by extension all over the world, because once you kill free speech in America, you'll kill free speech all over the world. It's the first step toward killing free speech. We see free speech under assault in France, and that's got something to do with Elon Musk too, and by the lefties in France. We see free speech under attack in the United Kingdom, right? In Brazil, commies there just banned X, owned by Elon Musk. Elon Musk is a ferocious advocate for free speech, and that makes him a target of and an enemy of today's Democrat Party. Elon Musk must be some kind of a right-wing nut, a right-wing zealot supporting free speech the way he does.
I supported Obama. I stood in line for 6 hours to shake Obama's hand when he was running for president. I'd call myself, historically a moderate Democrat, but now I feel like we're really at a critical juncture for the country. Critical juncture,
you might say, for the country. I would say that is a fact, Jack. And so Robert F. Kennedy Jr., I think he's from a Democrat family, isn't he? And Elon Musk, lifelong middle-of-the-road, moderate Democrat, and now he's jumped on board with President Trump because he, too, has seen what has happened to the once honorable Democratic Party. It is no longer democratic, and it is no longer honorable, and it no longer supports, protects, and defends the Constitution and the Bill of Rights in the United States of America. Just to scratch the surface on that. But let's go to the latest update on this. In California, there is a lifelong Democrat, a woman who grew up she's a Latina, or as Joe Biden would say, a Latinx, not just an ethnic group, but also a bathroom tissue. And this woman, Gloria Romero, who has been a rising star in the Democrat Party in California, she is no longer a fan of the Democrat Party, and she's announced that she's leaving the Democrat Party. She became a state senator. Then she became the Democrat leader in the California State Senate. Gloria Romero from California.
Today, I say goodbye. Adios. I've had enough. I am now another near lifelong Democrat who is joining the growing number of people, including key groups like Latinos, who are leaving the Democratic Party. This is not the Democratic Party that I once championed. I do not recognize it anymore, and I cannot continue.
Now, that's exactly what Robert F. Kennedy said, that he doesn't recognize the Democrat Party. His father, Robert F. Kennedy, the senior, would not recognize today's Democrat Party. His uncle, John F. Kennedy, would not recognize today's Democrat Party. And now comes Democrat state senator in California and the Democrat leader in the state Senate, Gloria Romero, also Latinx, which is problematic for the Democrats because they're such racists and everything to them is about race. So the Gloria Romero, former Democratic state Senate leader, joins Republicans. Isn't that amazing? This morning she was on the Fox News channel, bright and early, 5 a.m. hour, and I was watching it for you. And gosh, what happened, Gloria Romero? Why are you no longer identifying as a Democrat?
Well, it's been a bit of a reckoning, I believe. But to me, really, the major issue that prompted this reexamination of my political conscience was the complete eradication by the so-called Party of Democracy when 14 million votes in Democratic primaries were just thrown out, including mine. And similar to what we say happens in a banana republic, where what we say the dedazo is used in order to appoint who's going to be the political leader. That's essentially what happened by my party, and I was not going to sit still for it. And this followed already rigged primaries.
And the rigged primaries and stealing, and the 14 million votes that were stolen from Democrat primary voters, one of them was hers. So she was voting for Biden, and she has just abandoned ship in the past couple of weeks.
But overall, I could take a look at a number of issues: the march towards endless wars, the censorship, which was being approved by this Democratic administration, the soaring crime, open borders that are creating just havoc, and a mockery of what we even mean by citizenship.
I think she's not sounding like a Democrat anymore.
And then my long-term issue is really the continued state of school failures and the role of Kamala Harris in actually perpetuating school failure in California.
Yes, and then she got into Kamala Harris and what she's done, what she did when she was Attorney General to education in California, and what a disaster the educational system in California is for the students, for the parents, for the state, for the future. But one more Democrat comes to her senses. Not your run-of-the-mill Democrat, the former Democrat leader of the California State Senate.
Latinx.
The media doesn't know quite what to do about Gloria Romero. She's a WOC, a woman of color, and they're such racists. That's all they see is her ethnicity and her genitals. At least they try to. You know how they are. That sort of thing. But she was the Democrat majority leader in the California State Senate, and she had a press conference where she said things like this.
I changed my voting registration today as the sun was rising to Republican, which has, under Donald Trump, become the champion of working people, the big tent. And indeed, I will vote for Donald Trump this fall.
That is shocking, absolutely shocking. And she ticked off all the reasons: anti-free speech, the party of war, the party of destroying education, the party of open borders, party of gangs. They're not on our side, is what she's saying. And, you know, Ronald Reagan famously said he was a Democrat for a great many years, and he famously said, I didn't leave the Democratic Party left me. I, as a young man growing up in a Democrat household, mostly on the North Shore of Chicago, I was foolishly a Democrat. My first vote, very embarrassingly, as a young man, was for Jimmy Carter. Fortunately, I was able to redeem myself a little bit 4 years later, voting for Ronald Reagan. But Ronald Reagan famously warned us long ago.
You know, someone very profoundly once said many years ago that if fascism ever comes to America, it'll come in the name of liberalism. And what is fascism? Fascism is private ownership, private enterprise, but total government control and regulation. Well, isn't this the liberal philosophy? The conservative, so-called, is the one that says less government, get off my back, get out of my pocket, and let me have more control of my own destiny.
And that goes with audio that I'm going to share with you today of Kamala Harris from several years ago now, talking about banning President Trump while he was president of the United States from then Twitter because they wanted to trample free speech, get in bed with corporate powers, fulfilling Benito Mussolini's definition of fascism as a merger of state and corporate power. Ronald Reagan saw the future. You know, they're still demonizing him. His movie, the Reagan movie, is out now, and the audiences absolutely love it. It's off the charts how much the audiences love it, and it's off the charts how much the critics hate it. Guess why?